Hello everyone, it's nice to see you back. How did you all get on last week? Or I should say during the last few weeks, because it's been a month since we last met as a group.
I think it's good.
Yeah? You all coped okay? Any problems? Anybody had any particular issues? Of course, when I weighed you and we went through your targets and so on, we discussed your individual problems. But is there anything you might want to share with the rest of the group as to what you found really useful and what perhaps you didn't find very useful? Anything, any tips you want to share with each other?
I think I did manage to keep off the sweet, but I wasn't getting it, but my wife was getting it. Like a couple of days I went off track, in the month, kind of like 2 days. Well, I did it 5 days, but the other 2 days my wife got it, but it's kind of she offered it.
And you took it.
So,
well, it's going to happen, and as I've said in the previous one, that a lapse is not a relapse. So if you skipped off track, no big deal. And maybe it might be an idea, depending on who's the cook or who's the shopper in the family, bring them along to the next session, because by bringing them on board, then you're involving them as well, so they feel obliged to support you in a way. So it'd be useful to actually bring other family members if you can. Okay, today's session is, last time we talked about fats, and as you know from our clinic visit 1 and 2, there are different food groups in our diet, and to get a balanced diet we need to get foods from the right food groups. So one of the food groups we're going to be talking about today is carbohydrates. What do you understand when I say carbohydrates?
Means maybe rice or something like that.
Okay. Do you know how many types of carbohydrates there are in our diet? Like we talked about fats last time as to different types of fat. Any idea how many types?
I think there's 3. One of them is sugar, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what the other ones might be?
The other one's fiber.
Right.
And
Anybody else with any ideas? Well,
chapati bread.
Yeah, I mean, those are all examples of carbohydrates, okay? But mainly, if we're discussing from an educational point of view, carbohydrates, there are 2 main types of carbohydrates in the diet. One is sugar, which you mentioned. One is starches, okay? And that carbohydrates is the umbrella term that covers sugars and starches. So I'm going to just go through some of those food examples as to what is considered sugar and what is starches. Does anybody know the main difference of the sugars and starches?
starch makes you fuller, and sugar, well, no matter how much you eat it, you won't feel full, I believe.
It's just tasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, absolutely. The difference between starches and sugar is that foods which are in the starch section stay in our system for longer, so you feel fuller. And obviously, the more fuller you feel, the less likely you are to then to pick on snacks or other high-calorie foods. This is particularly relevant for the starches which are higher in fiber, and you mentioned fiber. Fiber itself isn't a section of carbohydrate, but fiber-rich foods come into the starches, okay? So the more fiber-rich carbohydrates you have, such as whole grain bread, the brown rice, the wholemeal chapatis, atta, the whole grain cereals, fruits and veg, that's all the high fiber kind of carbohydrates in that section, okay? So let's just go through. Can everybody see what I've got on the table? Because basically this is giving an example. If we concentrate on this section, this is the starches. This little section in the front are the sugars. So as far as the starches are concerned, you've already mentioned that there's foods like the atta, so to make the chapatis, the bread, the cereal. There's another example of cereal, croissant, rye-vita, so the dry biscuits that would also come under the carbs. The pasta, so there's spaghetti down there, or there's the naan bread, puris there. Potatoes, obviously, are starches, and there's chapatis, actually made chapatis there. Rice, those are starches, okay? These are good in the sense that they need to be part of our diet as long as you try and have more of the whole grain varieties and not the white versions. And then we have the sugars. Sugars, as Noor has said, it's actually empty calories. Sugar doesn't give us anything other than calories. So unless the yum, yes.
Taste.
Of course, very tasty, and you don't have to stop sugar. Okay, this is not what it's all about. But the idea is just to be aware that carbohydrates, starches will make you feel fuller for longer. Sugars don't. So when we say sugars, it includes obviously the table sugar, like the white sugar there, brown sugar, sugar in the form of jam or honey. What I haven't got there is actually gur, because a lot of our families tend to use gur, which is the jaggery in the English term, as a form of sugar. So it's for sweetening food. Some families actually use gur, but that would come under the sugar section as opposed to the starch section. And of course, chocolate is there because it's sugar, or a lot of sugar, but not just chocolate, but you have to think of the sweets. Anything which you know will have a lot of sugar, the Indian mithai would all really be in that section. So two main types of carbohydrates. One is sugars, which we really don't need, and one is starches, which we do need, but as long as we're trying to have more of the high fiber versions, that would be better.
Is good better than sugar?
In terms of the calories or in terms of health, what else? Either?
Either?
Not really. I mean, basically, gur is, it's almost like some people saying, I only use brown sugar. Whichever type of sugar you're using, so whether it's in the form of gur or whether it's in the form of brown sugar or white sugar, the benefits as far as health are minimal in any of them. Yes, the gur is very, it's not processed, so it's very raw, and you'd have to eat a mountain of it to get the minerals that you would be getting. And of course, we don't want you to do that because there's a lot of calories and it's pure sugar. Okay, so that's the sugar and the starches. So before we move on to where we're getting our hidden sugars and so on, like last time when you did the quiz on fat, I'd like you to now do a quiz on carbohydrates. So similar to last time, I'll give you the quiz, have a go at it, you can discuss it with each other, and you don't have to look so serious. This is not a test, right? You can chat and you can even look for answers with each other, and then we'll go through the answers at the end. Okay? Right, so let's give you the quiz. So basically, like last time, just tick the right answer or answers. There may be more than one answer. Just take a few minutes.
Just two.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's it.
On the back.
Red Bull. We're talking about
Yes.
Red Bull.
Okay, so let's go through the answers. Like last time, just one at a time. So number one was, in our diets, how many types of carbohydrates are there?
Two.
B.
Yep, you should have all got that right because we talked about that first thing. Excellent, great. Number two, what are the answers?
A.
A.
So the question was, carbohydrates are found in, so it's given you different things. The answer is F.
Oh. Oh yes.
Oh,
Okay, think.
I checked them all, but I didn't see that bit.
No, but
Milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in carbohydrates, sugar,
It's milk
fruits,
sugar.
It's just
vegetables as
because
well,
of
alcohol and milk.
Milk, I didn't go for carbs. And
Yeah.
do we have sugar in
Carbs
milk?
as well.
The lactose.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, and alcohol is sugar as well.
Yeah, and some veg have it as
Yeah.
well.
So basically, carbs. Obviously, there are some groups, some foods which are definitely, it's obvious it's carbs, but you will find carbs in other kinds of foods, and it's actually in most things. The only thing you don't find carbs is actually meat or fish. But other than that, majority of the time there will be some carbs in one way or form in the different foods you eat in day to day. So the answer to number two is all of the above. So number three, which of these is better to use if you're trying to lose weight?
None above.
You put
D.
D? Yeah, none of the above. So like we've said, so whether it's brown sugar, white sugar, gur or honey, It really makes no difference as far as calories are concerned. So if you're trying to lose weight, that's what you're trying to cut down. So none of the above. So number 4, to lose weight, we have to stop eating carbohydrates. True or false?
False.
Great. Good. The reason I put that in there is that there's a lot of false information in the media, and perhaps you've come across friends or family members who actually go on what they call the carbs-free diet. They just stop all carbs. And it's fine doing that short term. You know, it's fine doing that for any food group. But you have to remember that carbs are a very important food group. They give us energy, a lot of vitamins and minerals, and you know, they're very important as part of the balanced diet. Okay, so the idea to lose weight is you don't have to stop carbs. You just have to watch the portion sizes and obviously the way you're cooking them or what you're eating them with. Right? So we come on to the sort of sugar side now. So number 5 is which of the drinks, and there are a few examples there, has the highest amount of sugar. So there's can of Coke, Lucozade Energy, there's Red Bull, and there's Ribena.
I said
I said
B.
Lucozade.
I said Lucozade and Red Bull.
B.
It could be. The answer there is B. Okay, so out of the ones listed, they're all high in sugar, but out of the ones listed, Lucozade has the highest amount of sugar in that volume. So 330 ml Lucozade is actually about 12 spoons of sugar in it. Okay, any idea how much the Red Bull might have?
About 15 teaspoons.
Well, Lucozade Energy is the most. That's 12 teaspoons. The others are lower than that. Actually, don't worry. We can come back to that when we're guessing the hidden sugars. But off that list, the answer is B. Okay. So number 6 is what? Cereals. So out of those, which has the lowest amount of sugar?
Porridge.
I put porridge.
Anybody else with anything
Could be
different?
everyone, but depending how it's made. But I've gone for Weetabix and
No, porridge and Weetabix are the lowest, I think, out of the other two.
The lowest there is Weetabix.
Yeah.
Okay, Weetabix only has a trace of sugar.
Okay.
Porridge, well, we're talking about per serving. Porridge does have some, and of course the things like muesli and Cheerios will have a lot more. But if you're looking for a cereal which has got just a trace of sugar, then it's Weetabix. So the answer is A, as far as the lowest amount of sugar from that list, from those list of cereals. So looking at low-fat fruit yogurt, any idea how many teaspoons of sugar there might be in a pot of low-fat
I
fruit yogurt?
think it's about 3. C.
I put none.
I put none.
Lally?
I put 3.
It's 4.
We're all wrong.
No, it's the reason that question is there is just to make you realise that sometimes, I'm sure everybody looked at low-fat
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
and
Yeah.
assumed that anything that's low in fat is automatically going to be low in sugar. No. Okay, be very careful when you are buying any of the healthier options, check the label. Yes, it is obviously low in fat, but to compensate for the taste, they add extra sugar.
I said, didn't I? Probably 4. but
So there's
I
4.
put 3.
This question is tricky though, but there's some like yogurt that says sugar free. That's what I'm going for none.
But the question said low-fat fruit yogurt. It didn't say sugar-free fruit yogurt. If I put
Okay.
sugar-free, that's different.
Then it's
All right.
Yeah, sugar-free means sugar-free. But then, actually, that's a good
Even then
point.
it's not
But actually, if
gluten-free.
it was sugar-free, then it might be higher in fat.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
So
compensate
the
for
whole
something.
idea
Yeah.
is to just be aware of making sure you're reading the food label. Okay, so number 8, which of these biscuits has the lowest amount of sugar?
Rich tea.
yeah.
Everybody got rich tea?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And number 9, now we're coming back to the solid sort of carbohydrates thing. So off the list there, which of these has the most grams of carbohydrate?
I put naan bread.
I said bread. Slices of
I
bread.
went for, first of all, I went for D, and then I just corrected myself. I went for E, and I put both the D and E.
Okay, if we're looking at the grams of carbohydrate from that list is actually naan bread. If you think about it, the amount of flour you need to make
Make
naan
it.
bread is a lot more than you need to make a roti if you're comparing that kind of groups. But carbohydrates themselves, naan breads tend to be much heavier in terms of the flour. So they would, a naan bread can sometimes have up to 70 grams of
Even
carbohydrate.
It's heavy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is much
That's
heavier.
what it is.
So from that list, the answer is C. And number 10, I threw alcohol in here only because I know we're not talking about alcohol per se, but it's just because it does have some carbs, and as we've said before, alcohol is going to be contributing to your calories if you do drink alcohol, so I thought I'd throw this in. Any idea what the recommended units of alcohol are?
14.
C.
See,
C. Well, C, but
C.
they used to be B, didn't they?
Yeah, but it's
21
C
for
now.
men
They
and
change
20
changed
for
it.
women.
It's the same now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's right. It's number C. It's 14 units for men
That means
and
women
women.
can drink more and men have to drink the same.
Men have to drink less now, isn't it now?
Less.
Yeah,
21
men have to
14.
Do you
Men
understand?
have to drink less.
Do you understand what units mean? Like if somebody said you can have up to 14 units, would you know what a unit means? Yeah, you're happy with what a unit is. Okay, so you've all done really well on that, so that's good. Any questions on the quiz? Anything? Yeah, go ahead.
I got a question. That's question 3 actually. If we go back on question 3, obviously the answer is D.
Yeah.
But I was told like brown is better for anything. So I thought like, well, for this question it's fine, but normally brown is better, I was told.
I mean, yeah,
Anything
most
brown.
people equate brown to high fiber, okay, and that's where people assume. And yes, generally things with high fiber, with more fiber in, are going to be better for us. But when it comes to things like brown sugar or brown eggs even, which some people seem to think is healthier because it's brown, it's just not quite the same, because at the end of the day, sugar is sugar, whether brown or white. It's the colouring in the sugar, okay? There's no fibre in there.
So it's not healthier.
It's not healthier, no, it's not. There's no fibre in it. It's pure sugar, and it's got the brown, the colouring is in there, okay? So it's the colouring which is making it brown. Or if it's very raw, the raw cane sugar, if anybody has actually seen the sugar cane being processed into sugar, it comes out very dark. So that's probably the natural colour. If you get the raw, the really authentic raw, it's still not going to have any fibre in it.
Okay.
It's purely the colour in that packet. Okay, so that's the answer. I mean, going back onto the sugar aspect, of course, we talked about sugar being empty calories and it's not helping with weight loss. But the other thing to remember with sugar is it's actually obviously not good for the teeth. So, you know, as parents, as perhaps grandparents, it's important to remember that any time that the child or, you know, children growing up are having that kind of sugar, it's having a detrimental effect on teeth. So the constant visits to the dentist may be because of that. So you have to be very careful, not just from the empty calories, but it's the teeth problem as well. Yeah. Okay, so you can put that away. What I thought we'd do now is have like a bit of a game in guessing the amount of sugar, because we all have our favorite drinks, we all have our favorite foods, and more often than not, you know, we don't read the back of the label to say how many spoons, and some people seem to think one drink is better than another, so I thought it'd be nice to just get your opinions on it. So I've just got a couple of things here, but I thought I'd start off with Coke, one of our favorite, or I should say people's favorite drink. And I've got a glass in front, and I've got a spoon and sugar in there. So it's really to ask you, how many spoons of sugar do you think there are in that can of Coke?
Tablespoon or
12.
teaspoon?
Sorry, this teaspoon.
8.
12.
6.
Cynthia, anything?
I would say 10 or more. Yeah.
Okay, so basically they're quite sort of heat ones, but a can of Coke, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so can you imagine just in that one can, There's that much sugar.
It's not bad.
Yeah, and I think that the problem is that unless you see it visually, and when people say, you know, fizzy drinks are high in sugar, you sort of say, yeah. But when you actually are taking it out, you sort of realize just how much
How
there
much
is.
sugar?
So there's a lot of sugar, and not just in the Coke, but in most fizzy drinks.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about the Coke, but who likes their juices? You do? Have you a favourite, or do you tend to go for a particular make?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, you just have juice. Again, just to give you some idea as to just how much the sugar content can vary according to the different types of juices. I've just got a sample here. Any idea? I mean, this is just a carton, a small carton, which a lot of children perhaps take to school with them. You might be putting them in their lunch boxes. You might be drinking yourself. Any idea how much sugar there might be in that little carton?
7.5,
You seem very particular.
maybe.
I would say 10.
I mean, it's a small carton, okay?
Over 7 then, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
about 7, 8, I would say.
Five,
Probably
six?
more than the, I would say 9.
Fine.
Okay. This one, this particular one, it's a Mango brand. It has 7.5 teaspoons of sugar in that little carton. So almost the amount that the can of Coke had. So it's not better for you as far as the sugar is concerned. Okay. Just a few, we'll quickly run through some of the other hidden sugars. Another popular drink is Ribena. Very popular with both children and adults, and actually a lot of the older people, you know, particularly the grannies and granddads. So any idea? So we're looking at a glass, so 250 ml glass, so a full glass.
Is that a normal one?
Pardon? This is
A
a normal
normal
one.
one?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
not the low sugar. It's a normal Ribena. Any idea how much?
So 5.
I'll say about 4 or 5, yeah.
About 6.
7.
I guess.
I don't know, I don't drink.
Okay, so 5 spoons, right? So far we've compared something like Coke to a fruit juice to something which is high in vitamin C, which it is, Ribena, and a lot of people seem to drink it as a health drink as well, just to show how much hidden sugar there is. These are all foods with hidden sugars.
What was in Ribena?
Ribena is 5
Okay.
in the glass. Okay,
One glass,
how much
not
in water?
That particular one, nothing.
None.
Yeah.
But some of them do have a trace, I think, but that one, nothing.
Yeah, so basically water is a drink with actually zero sugar. But of course you can get the ones, like we've got some flavoured ones here, which will have some sugar. So you need to again check the label. You know, for something like this, about 2.5 spoons of sugar. So, you know, and it actually says 50% less sugar on the label. So you almost think, oh, it's going to be healthy. It's healthier than the original, but it's still not zero sugar.
A lot of people are drinking that because
Yeah,
it says
at the
aloe
moment,
vera
I'm
on
not-
that.
It's
Yeah.
healthy, but it's got, because of aloe vera, it's got a lot more sugar.
Well, it depends what you believe, if aloe vera is healthy or not.
Easy if you rub it on your legs.
Oh yeah, yummy.
Burfi, right?
Is that
It's all
real?
sugar.
You can taste it later. But any idea how much in that piece?
For this one, I would go 20.
Loads.
Go for it.
I reckon about 10, 11 at least in that little piece.
I think that's pure sugar, to be honest. I
And
wouldn't
pure
say
fat.
how many, but
It's actually not as bad as you'll think. From the sugar point of view. If you think that the can of Coke had 8 spoons,
yeah.
the Lucozade we looked on the quiz has got about 12 teaspoons. That piece has about 4 teaspoons. So it's actually, we talk about sugar. Obviously,
Just
as
four,
far
I
as,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
but as far as obviously it's an unhealthy food because it's got a lot of fat as well and there's no fiber in it. So, you know, in that context. But if we're looking at pure sugar, yes, it's high, but it's not as high as some of the juices even. So there's some things we think are really bad. Of course, I wouldn't recommend you to have this, but I'm just giving you in comparison.
Because these things I have seen them like the amount of milk they're using and
Yeah.
and it's half of it has to be sugar.
Yeah, but when you analyze it in terms of the portion size. Of course, if you're going to have half the packet,
Then it's
you are
like
going to end up
sugar.
having a lot more. But this particular size will give you 4 teaspoons of sugar. A lot of fat, of course, a lot of calories overall, but you know the sugar aspect is about 4.
Because you can get coconut ones, they're really high. They're
Well,
higher
of
in
course,
sugar.
you get different varieties. You get the pistachio,
Yeah.
coconut, chocolate one even. So obviously, depending on what make it is, it's going to build up the sugar and the calories on that. And of course, we've got jalebis there. For those of you that can't see, another favorite Indian sweet. Yeah,
Very popular one, isn't it?
very popular. Does anybody have these on a weekend basis? Because I know some families this is almost like breakfast on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In Kenya.
gatia and jalebis.
Jalebis.
Yeah. Again, you know, like the burfi, but this is much higher in sugar. It's lower in fat compared to burfi, but much higher in sugar because, you know, obviously the way it's made. So very, very high in the sugar aspect. And then, of course, the more common snacks like biscuits. This is just an example of digestives, but, you know, we're looking at, and you looked in your quiz, rich tea is the one in lowest. But any idea how many, like say if you had two digestives,
A couple of teaspoons, I think at least.
But for
it's not too bad digestive. 2 digestives, 1 spoon of sugar.
So,
But, you know, it's got fat.
Like that.
It's got fat, but it's one, if you're looking from just the sugar aspect, this is 1 teaspoon.
there's a lot.
So the reason why all these are out here and for you to guess was just to make you aware that there's a lot of foods in our diet which have got hidden sugars. It's not necessarily obvious to you. You know, so the fruit juices, the fizzy drinks are one of our main intakes of hidden sugars, right? So before we wrap up on this and move on to the next shorter topic for the session, how in your own diets, how do you think you can cut down on your sugar intake?
Biscuits.
Okay, in your personal case, it's the biscuits. So that's one way of cutting down sugars. Anything else? Oh, I'll put it here because we've got something else there.
I don't really have fruits or juices.
Jalebis?
If you eat them and if you cut down on them, yes. And so Indian sweets, cut down, reducing sugar. What else?
Coke, fizzy drink.
Yeah, fizzy drinks. Basically, if you look around as to what contributes the
highest.
most of the hidden sugars, it is fizzy drinks, and that's both in adults and children. So cutting down on fizzy drinks, cutting down on perhaps the sugar-coated snacks, you know, things like the whether it's sweets, chocolates, things like that. Anything else?
Maybe I'll go for porridge rather than cereal because you said cereal.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point. Cereals can also be one of our great contributors of sugar. So you need to compare the sugar in the different cereals. So
Yeah.
for example, rather than choosing something like sugar-coated cereals like Frosties or
Yeah.
Cocoa Pops or Sugar Puffs, to go for something like porridge. And something. Okay, so that's the sugar aspect. What about fiber? You know, we talked about how fiber, although I said it's not a carbohydrate, fiber itself isn't carbohydrate, but fiber is the indigestible part of the plant cell wall. So it stays in our system for longer, and that means not just keeping us fuller for longer, but obviously protects us or prevents or reduces the risk of bowel cancer as well. So in terms of increasing your fiber intake, because of the sheer fact of how good it is for our health, how would you achieve that?
By choosing wholemeal stuff.
Yeah.
So basically switching, okay?
yeah.
So whole meal, whole grain. Where else do you think fiber comes from?
Fruits.
Yeah, so all the fruits and vegetables, okay? One good way of including more fiber, if you're not keen on fruit and veg, because not everybody's keen on that, is, you know, when you are making anything like a curry, and you're having potatoes in it, because most of our curries do have, vegetable curries tend to have potatoes in it, to make sure you've got the skin on. Don't peel the skin, because the skin has most of the fiber in it. So that's one way of getting fiber if you're not keen on fruits and veg. And of course salad is another way of getting fiber, and the whole grain stuff. Do you all make your currently, if you do make rotis, do you tend to use wholemeal flour, or does anybody use anything different?
I use white.
You use white,
Semi one, half. Yeah.
half and half. Do you make chapatis?
Yeah, I do.
Which flour do you use?
I use a medium one.
The medium. There's medium brown, they call it.
Yeah, medium brown,
Medium,
yes.
Okay.
Just medium white.
Right. I mean, if there's a problem in trying to get the family to eat chapatis made from wholemeal, because they can be quite dry, is to try and use a mix. So the medium one is not bad at all, but what you can try and do is use a little bit of white in the wholemeal initially, and then gradually start adding more wholemeal and less of the white. Just a way of encouraging. And of course, for those that eat more rice, is to try and, if you're having rice once in a while, then it's fine. You know, if you're using white basmati rice, it's not a problem. But if you're a rice eater, then brown rice is a better, as far as fibre is concerned.
But I heard it's longer to cook, then that takes up to my time.
Yeah, it is slightly longer to cook, but it tastes actually, once you've had it, it's actually tastier because it's like a nutty taste. But you don't have to use it every time. You know, for example, if you're having rice 5 times a week,
Yeah.
if you try and have brown rice once a week, that's fine. Any questions on carbohydrates or any aspects of sugar, fibre, carbohydrates?
I was going to ask about the oats porridge
Mhm.
because someone told me that the packet one has sugar and to buy the thing. Is there any specific one I should use?
The idea of oats is the more unprocessed they are, the more effective they are as far as lowering cholesterol is concerned, and generally probably will be much lower in sugar. But the only way to find out is to read the labels, because
Okay.
depending on the brand, depending on the manufacturer, it varies. So next time you're in the cereal section, you need to compare like for like. So pick up 2 packets of porridge and see which one. Obviously the sachets that you can buy nowadays, a lot of them are flavoured.
Yeah.
You know, some have got golden syrup, some have got nuts and raisins. So obviously the additions might add more sugar in them. So you just need to read the labels.
Okay.
Okay.
I find generally with oats, the more expensive they are, the worse they are in sugar, you know, in the levels of.
As I said, you do have to compare labels, because the unprocessed, what that means is that your gut has to work quite hard to digest it, which means it's much richer in fibre, and that is going to help in terms of lowering cholesterol, making you feel fuller, and the rest of it. Right. Okay. Anything else on carbs? Is there anything from the carb section that you feel you might want to set your target until next week? Or we can come back to this at the end of the session, but is there anything right that sticks in your mind to say, actually, yeah, I could do that? No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say pasta.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't use brown pasta, can you still use the white pasta if you don't like
You
it?
can use any, basically from your carb section. You don't have to use brown, but we're trying to encourage more fibre because of the reasons that I've told you. But, there is no compulsion that you can only use brown pasta, or you can only use brown rice.
It's okay to eat it.
It's absolutely fine. But it's the portions. It
Yeah.
all comes back to the portion control as far as weight loss is concerned. Okay, we'll come back to the targets, I think, at the end. I just want to quickly move on to a next topic, because often, it's fine knowing what to eat and so on, but sometimes we're put into certain situations which makes us go off our track. So the next section is really about triggers, what triggers there are that gets us to go off rails. Can you think of anything in your day-to-day life, or perhaps that you've come across in the last few weeks, as to what might trigger you to go off track?
For me, I think it's my rice.
What triggers you to eat more rice? Is there a trigger for that, or you just like rice? I mean, there's a difference between eating when you're hungry, which is normal, or eating because you feel like a particular thing. Is there anything that anybody has?
For me personally, I just eat it because it's there.
Okay, so it happens to be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just what triggers you to eat. So sorry. Anybody else? Anything?
And sometimes, you know, not to be rude when colleagues are offering, so you just take it.
Okay. Yeah.
For me, it's temptation.
For me, it's going out.
Oops. Sorry.
Going out for dinner.
So the trigger is that if you're out, you.
You're going to eat it because it's
Anything else that triggers?
I just like to have it when I'm watching TV in the evening.
So there's
Crisps,
okay.
munchies.
So do you think you tend to link snacks or say crisps with your TV? Like, so you sit down to watch TV, so you
Yeah.
feel you have.
You want munchies,
Well,
chocolate, crisps.
I think more my snacking, apart from biscuits, it's more with wine. So if I have wine, that's a trigger to have rubbish, basically.
So basically, alcohol
Yeah.
encourages or triggers you to have a snack. Okay, these are just some examples. Obviously, you know, people have different triggers as to why they eat. You know, these are what's happening to you as individuals, but sometimes people eat because they're lonely, they're bored. Some people eat because they've had a really hard day at work and, you know, they go for the sugar fix. Some people eat, like Noor said, you know, if you're offered something, you don't want to upset a colleague or, you know, often, particularly in our community, there's a lot of social functions. So, you know, whether it's somebody's birthday or wedding or somebody buys a new car, they give you a box of sweets, any excuse really for a party or any kind of rich food. Those are all kind of triggers and trigger situations. The reason I brought this up is that there's strategies of coping with it. Okay, so next time, the idea is that if you can link what caused you to eat those, you can get the coping strategies, how you can deal with it if you were put in that situation next time. Okay, so just for an example, I'll ask you for coping strategies. Noor, if this happens to be there, is there a strategy you can use to prevent you being in that situation again?
I think so, yeah.
What would you do?
Not look at it.
Not look.
Eat by yourself.
Anything
Just
else?
away.
Look away.
Or just, or put it away, as simple as that.
Hide it away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Still
that
on
could
my
be.
mind.
But you can't hide it away if you're in
On your brain.
No, but because it
piano
just.
party or in
No, I mean,
No,
this
this
is-
one he
it's
said.
just by the kettle, I'm making a cup of coffee.
Okay.
It's just there,
All right,
and
so
it's easy. If I put it away, I won't be walking and get it. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean that's a coping strategy. Excellent. Okay, that is a coping strategy, but you could think of others as well on top of that. For example, just not buy that particular food, so it's not even in the house.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, hiding
No, I
something.
don't buy these things. My
Right.
colleague bring it in.
Oh, you have to, well, maybe we need to speak. You need to have a chat with a colleague. To, you know, the idea is to get people on board in terms of giving you the support. So if you can get, whether it's family members or your partner or friends at work or colleagues, and they know that you're trying to reach a particular goal, to ask for their support, so they don't bring the temptations to you. Okay, I think we've covered this
Yeah,
not topic, it's similar to that. How about the going out one? How do you think, the coping strategy, what do you think you could do with that?
Not go out.
Go out less.
Oh.
We don't want you to stop going out just because you happen to be in the intervention
Anything to do
study,
with
okay?
mask or
You
walking
need
out.
to carry on doing exactly,
I
going
have
out.
a solution for that.
What's that?
Not to order as much.
Not to order as much. All right. Going out is absolutely fine. We're going to be talking about eating out and kinds of foods to order at our next session, but you shouldn't be stopped to going out just for this sake. There are ways of coping with what you order, why you order, the
I
amounts you
don't order
order.
anything. Everybody else does.
They order it
And
for
just
you,
pick.
and you pay.
They order everything and it's on the table.
So you feel obliged to have it.
I don't feel obliged, I just have it.
Okay, we're going to talk about this in more detail next visit, next clinic visit. What about this crisps link with TV? What could you?
TV?
Like munching. I like to have something when I'm watching TV.
Is there any way, any coping strategy that you can think of that might be able to change this? You can't think of anybody else? Can you think of what you could suggest instead of the crisps?
Reading.
I'm watching
No,
TV.
you can't read and watch TV.
Instead of watching TV. You can't eat and read at the same time.
Don't watch TV.
I
watching the movies.
personally, I mean, first of all, it depends. Sorry, you said not. But I mean, what you have to remember is that all munching things, if you're looking at the snacks, they're all going to be quite high in calories, okay, fat calories. Perhaps look for, if you just want crisp, perhaps look for the baked variety, right? And even with that, perhaps try and think, okay, can I have one every other day instead of every time I sit down? So you need to just look at alternatives. So you don't have to stop watching TV or stop eating crisps. The idea is just look for healthier alternatives. What about this one?
Alcohol.
Alcohol triggers for you. I mean, you mentioned that
Yeah.
you know you feel you have to have.
Yeah.
What? How do you think the coping would be
Well,
there?
snacks, what I do, because I look at the labels a lot. That's just make it my hobby at the moment. But I buy something like Quavers, which is lighter.
Okay.
It's lighter in fat as well than Mars crisps. and things
I
like
mean that is an option, but what you
I
might
try
want
not
to
drink.
yeah, what you might want to do is you have to remember that alcohol is empty calories as well,
Yeah.
so that the two added together. But again, you don't have to stop this. It's just a question of trying to figure
How
out how often, amounts, and so on. Okay, so this is more or less sort of today's session, just to give you some ideas as to how you can cope with different trigger situations, and you know, not to get upset if you've had that extra samosa because your friend gave it, or you've had the crisps. It's just to get back on track. Yeah. So what I've got today, like last time, we've got the participant booklet for today. So it's got all the information I covered in today's session on the carbs, on the fiber, on the hidden fat, on the hidden sugars, and on these triggers. And like last time, at the in the last page is your target setting. So if I pass it, we'll quickly run through like we did last time as to each page, and then I'd like you to set your own targets for this visit. So the first bit is just giving you the explanation on carbs. And the second page is very much to do with amount of hidden sugars. It gives you actually in spoonfuls. It might be quite a surprise for some of you for some of the things. And then the triggers and trigger situations. It would be very useful if actually once you get home, once you get time to actually go through this and try and do this exercise which talks about the trigger situation and coping strategies, because what we'd like to do is when you come back in the next visit to discuss this, because there are always coping strategies for each of the trigger situations, and that will help you towards reaching your goal. Okay. And this eating behavior exercise, in fact, if you bring this book with you when you come in next visit, I'd like to go through this, because you know there are certain links we can break if you have particular issues with particular situations. And at the last page is your target setting. So if you can move on to that page. So in addition to whatever targets you've set yourself so far, and of the ones we discussed earlier when you came in to be weighed, is there anything you think you can set yourself from today's session for the next visit?
Maybe I'll go for brown rice. Maybe.
Okay, so how often in the week instead of white?
I normally on 7 days.
You have rice 7 days.
So
Okay.
maybe I'll try it twice a week.
So instead of having white rice 7 days,
Yeah.
you're going to have white rice 5 days a
5
week,
days,
and
yeah.
twice you're going to have brown rice. Excellent. Okay. So that's what you're going to write down.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Noor? Anything from today's session that you might want to put as a target?
I think I'll just try to run once a week.
Okay, so you've taken activity.
Yes.
Excellent. I mean, the idea is the targets for each week don't have to be related to the session. If you're going to build on your activity, that's absolutely fine, because you already did have an activity target in the first visit 1 and 2. But if you want to build on that, okay, fine. What about you, Lali?
I have crisps every other day, not every day.
You sound very upset at that. Do you think that's realistic?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you can only try.
Maybe 3 times a week and not 7.
Okay, fine. Right. What about you?
I only have the wine at weekend, so during the week I don't. So
It doesn't
snacking
have to be.
goes
It doesn't
down.
have to be from this list of your triggers,
Okay.
but just
Well, I
generally
like
from today's session.
Okay.
Is there anything from today's
Probably
session?
biscuit then. So I like my biscuit.
So what is your goal, or what's your target?
Instead of having one biscuit every day at 5 o'clock with my tea,
You're
I
right.
have it 3 days rather than 5 days or 7
Okay.
days.
Do you want to make a note of that so that you've got it in front of you? Yeah. So again, it's really important to record keeping is really important, because what we find is that the more you write down as your food and drink, more people are more successful in losing weight and maintaining that weight loss, and also it's a good way to refer back to. So if you're having an off day, you can just refer back to your visits and say, oh yeah, I wrote that. That's my target. That's what I need to achieve. It's a very useful reference book. You all mentioned as to what your triggers are and your coping strategies, but I've just written down some of the things that some of the participants in some of my other groups have come and said, because I think this tends to happen to most of us at some time or another. Many people tend to eat when they're bored or lonely, because they're offered food, which we already covered, associate cup of tea with biscuits, which you do, so it's tea with eating crisps, which you do, so it's just recapping, right? But you've told me your coping strategies, but I actually wrote down some which might be in addition to your own coping strategies. So I find it quite useful that, some people eat if they're bored or lonely, is to perhaps get on with your housework. I know it sounds really boring, but it's one way of getting it out of the way. Find a hobby, speak to a friend, get that friend to go for a walk with you. That's 2 birds with 1 stone. You cut down on your whatever you're eating, and you're doing more exercise. Ask your friends for support. I know we mentioned that earlier as well, but that's really important, because the more people you get involved in helping you, the more successful you're going to be. The temptations won't be there. If you're link the cups of tea with biscuits, as you said, you can swap. Instead of having 2, have 1. And you have to remember that you've built that link between tea and biscuits, or TV and crisps, over a period of time. It's a habit. And habits take a long time to change. So don't expect to change overnight. It's not going to happen. But, just be aware and just do it in stages. And Lali, as I said, allow baked crisps instead of your usual variety every other day, which you've said you would. Okay, so that is the coping strategies which we've talked about. You set yourselves your targets for next visit. The other thing I would like to please remind you is when you come to the next clinic visit, which is going to be in 4 weeks' time, if you tend to eat out at the same place or have a takeaway from a particular restaurant, it'd be really useful if you could bring a menu from there, because you mentioned about eating out and not sure what to order and what not to order. So we'll be talking more about the kind of healthier options for you that you can choose from your favorite restaurant and still be able to go out. Okay, is that feasible? Would you all be able to do that? And when I ring you between this visit and the next, I'll just remind you of that as well, so that at least you have a menu in front of you and we can go through with it as to the next time you go there, what might be a better option to what you normally choose. Okay, all right, I'll see you next month.
See you.
Bye.